Therapists and their patients are dealing with a nationwide shortage of Adderall, one of the best-known treatments for ADHD. According to national data, Adderall prescriptions for adults jumped 15% from 2020 to 2021. Some experts blame the shortage on the explosion of online mental health providers that diagnose cases and prescribe a lot of medication.
It's true. There has been a pretty devastating shortage of medication for ADHD patients. And while Adderall tends to get most of the news coverage, it certainly impacts other drugs that tend to be prescribed to people suffering from ADHD. Now, before I get to the details of the story and why it is that we're experiencing the kind of shortage we are experiencing, I just want to note that even prior to the pandemic, there was a problem with the overdiagnosis and overprescription of these drugs. These are stimulants, they are highly addictive, they're often abused, which is why they are considered, they're the kind of prescription drugs, controlled substances. They're considered controlled substances, and they undergo certain regulations that other prescription drugs do not undergo because of the high likelihood of abuse while using these drugs. Now, with that said though, the problem has actually gotten much worse during the coronavirus pandemic, and it has a lot to do with social media and looser restrictions on telemedicine. Now, just to give you a sense of how much the prescriptions for these stimulants have gone up in recent years, the number of ADHD diagnoses in 2010 were almost 5 times that, or 5 times what they were in 1999. And between 2007 and 2016, the number of diagnoses of ADHD in adults actually more than doubled. And now we have this emergence of social media where there is both user-generated content on ADHD and the symptoms they're experiencing and what they're doing to cope with that, and also ads coming from telemedicine companies that make it seem as though ADHD includes all these symptoms that honestly anyone can relate to, right? Even if you do not have ADHD, you've certainly experienced days where you're struggling to focus, where your attention span just feels shorter than usual. We all have days like that. It doesn't mean that you have ADHD, but the way these ads are put together would make you think that you're definitely experiencing the symptoms of ADHD and you need to talk to your doctor about potentially getting treatment for it. And usually these ads direct you to use a telemedicine service that they're advocating for in the ad. Now, what's really going on is once the pandemic started, people are less comfortable going to the hospital to visit their doctor for annual checkups, or if they notice that there's something they're experiencing, there's something wrong, they're less likely to feel comfortable going over to a hospital that is completely overwhelmed with coronavirus patients, and that's totally understandable. So in the beginning of the pandemic, one of the things that the Trump administration did was loosen the regulations on telemedicine. And when you're dealing with controlled substances like Adderall, there are certain regulations in place that essentially force the patient to go meet with a doctor face to face. You have to have regular, meetings and checkups with your doctor in order to get that prescription refilled. But with the looser regulations on telemedicine, suddenly you have people who can connect with a doctor online through the comfort of their own homes and not have to go through the extra trouble of meeting a doctor face to face. So that was one of the restrictions that was really loosened pertaining to these controlled substances like Adderall. At the same time though, you have these ads that you see on places like TikTok. I've certainly come across these ads. And again, the ads make it seem like you definitely have ADHD because you're experiencing all of these symptoms. Now, I wanna go to this video that talks a little bit about the user-generated content that you might come across if you're on TikTok or Instagram. Let's take a look.
One media analysis of popular TikTok videos found that talking about mental illness on social media can be tricky. about half of the videos that would get sampled contained misleading or potential misinformation. And most of these videos, what we found were that they were uploaded typically by users of the platform. Not a lot of healthcare professionals were on the platform, and typically it was mostly user-generated content.
And look, we're seeing that this same issue when it comes to randos giving financial advice on social media. They're not fiduciaries, they're not professional financial advisors, they're just random people telling you you should do X, Y, and Z to earn money, or you should invest in X, Y, or Z to increase your money or your wealth. And you should not be taking advice from random people on social media, whether it has to do with your health or your financial situation. Obviously, be an advocate for yourself and go out of your way. Make sure you go out of the way to talk to a real doctor, real professionals, because you don't want to needlessly take prescription drugs that could have some harmful effects on your life, on your body. And in the case of these wannabe financial advisors, you don't want to invest your money into something like, I don't know, FTX and lose the whatever you have, like invest it into something that'll be squandered by fraudsters like Sam Bankman-Fried. Now, what's interesting is what doctors are noticing with patients showing up and asking them very specific questions. So for instance, Dr. Sasha Hamdani, who's actually a doctor who has been diagnosed with ADHD, actually does put out some content on TikTok to help correct the misinformation that's all over the place on social media on this very issue. And she says, a lot of my patients would hold up their phone to the camera and be like, here's this video that I saw on TikTok, and this is why I have ADHD. Now, I wanna give you an example of one of the ads. What you're gonna see is sponsored content on TikTok, and it's exactly part of the problem. So I don't mean to pick on this particular guy. I'm sure it's sponsored content. It was an easy way to make some money, but there are many videos on TikTok that look just like this, sound just like this, and it's convincing people that they have ADHD and they should talk to a doctor and get their hands on Adderall as soon as possible. So let's take a quick look.
Did you finish that paper? What paper? The paper that's due tonight. Oh, yeah, no, I've just been staring at a blank document all day. Again? Yeah. Just get started by putting your name at the top. What time is it due? Midnight. Oh, okay, cool. I'll just wait here in my anxiety and stare at a wall until 11 when the urgency finally kicks in. Oh, fun, right? Dude, you gotta get this app called Timo. It's made for ADHD brains like ours. It helps me out a ton every day.
Yeah, guys, that is a disastrous ad. So disastrous, especially when you consider how young TikTok users are. And look at what he's selling. I'm really struggling in school, I can't get my work done, but there's this magic pill. There's a magic pill. I found a solution. By the way, Pitchfork's Dragon in our members section has a pretty hilarious comment about this. Imagine selling Adderall as a drug dealer. You guys wanna get high grades? I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, these are stimulants that make people who don't actually have ADHD feel like they're high. It's an upper. So that's part of the reason why it's abused. People like the way it makes them feel, but it's also incredibly addictive and can be incredibly destructive. Now, there's also another side of this that I think is important for you to know about, because with the prevalence of these diagnoses and people getting these prescriptions, it's leading to a shortage of the drugs that people with ADHD need to function. So they're going to pharmacies and they keep getting told, we don't have it, we don't have it. I was reading some testimonial stuff from CVS patients, like patients who get their drugs from CVS and other big chain pharmacies. And apparently the pharmacists, if you call to ask if they have it in stock, since it's a controlled substance, they won't tell you whether or not you have it in stock. So some of the patients literally have to drive from one pharmacy to another pharmacy to another pharmacy to see whether or not they can find a pharmacist who has the drugs that they need in stock so they can function. ADHD is real, okay? There are people who do need these drugs to be able to live a good life. And the idea that they're not able to get what they need because people are abusing it through prescriptions that they really shouldn't have is pretty infuriating and crazy. And again, if there are opportunities to loosen regulations to help companies make a lot of money, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. They're gonna wanna make more money and they're gonna overprescribe the drugs. So now some pharmacies have stopped filling prescriptions for people who received the prescription from a telemedicine company. I don't know if that's the solution to it because I'm sure some of those prescriptions are valid, right? So how do they determine which prescription is valid and which isn't? It's a mess. Now, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announced in October that there was a shortage of both the brand name and generic form of Adderall in the United States. And going back to Dr. Sasha Hamdani, she says, logistically, it's been a nightmare for patients and providers. Stimulant medications are so highly controlled, you can't just transfer it to a different pharmacy. You have to cancel a script. You have to then go find another pharmacy that has it. By that time, it might not be filled because other people have filled it there. It's a lot of logistical shifting and work that on that front. And that's extremely frustrating for the patient. And I can imagine that would be frustrating for the patient. So while it's important to consider ways for people to see a doctor when they otherwise wouldn't be able to, it's also important to consider the abuses of looser regulations and the abuses that could essentially lead to shortages like this that hurts everyone. It hurts the people who are taking drugs that they really shouldn't be taking, of course, but it also hurts the people who actually need those drugs in order to live a full and good life. And that's what we're seeing. And there is a limit to the amount of stimulants pharmacies can sell in a given year. And that's because of the fact that it's a controlled substance. So those limits, the loosened regulations when it came to telemedicine, the profit motive behind healthcare in this country, all of that is just a dangerous stew that has led to the problem that we're seeing today.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.